Imagine the rain starts today, then it keeps falling. Tomorrow, it's still raining. 3 days later, it hasn't stopped. Now forget your house. Forget your warm bed. Forget supermarkets, waterproof jackets, and electricity. Imagine you're an ancient human. Your fire is dying. Your food is running out. Everything around you is soaked, and the storm shows no sign of ending. So here's the question. What did ancient humans actually do when it rained for an entire week? And how did they survive when everything they depended on was disappearing? The first thing most people imagine is hunger. But hunger wasn't the biggest danger, it was fire. A prehistoric campfire wasn't just for cooking. It provided warmth, kept dangerous predators away, dried soaking wet animal hides, and made food safer to eat. If that fire died, everything became harder. After days of relentless rain, keeping even a tiny flame alive became one of the most important jobs in the entire group. Ancient humans understood something we often forget today. Starting a fire was difficult, protecting one was much easier. Instead of letting the flames disappear, they carefully protected the glowing embers. A layer of ash slowed the fire. Without putting it out completely, the embers stayed alive, waiting. When the rain finally stopped, those hidden coals could burst back into flames. It was one of humanity's earliest survival strategies. But even if they managed to protect their fire, another problem was already waiting outside. Food. Rain didn't make food disappear. It made food harder to find. Small animals stayed hidden inside burrows. Birds disappeared into thick trees. The tracks hunters relied on slowly vanished beneath the rain. Every journey became more dangerous. The ground turned slippery. Streams became rivers. Even familiar paths could suddenly become deadly. But ancient humans didn't survive by depending on only one kind of food. They adapted. When hunting became difficult, they gathered edible roots, wild fruits, nuts, safe mushrooms, and anything the landscape was still willing to provide. Knowledge became just as important as strength. One mistake could mean eating something poisonous. One discovery could feed an entire family. Sometimes the storm even helped. Heavy rain drove worms, frogs, and shellfish into places where they became easier to collect. The storm had closed one door. Quietly, it opened another. But finding food solved only one problem. Another challenge was waiting every single night, staying warm. Cold wasn't always the greatest danger. Being wet was. Once your body stays soaked for hours, it loses heat much faster. Even in places that weren't freezing, that constant loss of warmth slowly drained energy, weakened muscles, and made every task harder. Ancient humans couldn't pull on a waterproof jacket. They couldn't climb into a warm sleeping bag. Everything around them, their animal hides, their bedding, even the ground beneath them, became damp after days of endless rain. So once again, they adapted. Whenever possible, they sheltered inside caves, beneath rocky overhangs, or beneath thick natural cover that blocked part of the rain. They searched for places where the wind was weaker, because staying dry meant very little. If cold air kept stealing body heat, groups stayed close together, not just for comfort, but because every nearby body produced warmth. Sleeping side by side helped everyone lose less heat during the long nights. Even today, when people feel cold, their first instinct is often to move closer together. That ancient survival instinct never completely disappeared. But surviving the cold created another problem. If everyone stayed inside for too long, they eventually needed something the storm was quietly taking away: dry firewood. Where could ancient humans possibly find dry firewood after nearly a week of nonstop rain? At first, it sounds impossible, but the forest held secrets that experience had already taught them. Not every piece of wood became completely soaked. The outside of a fallen branch might be dripping with water, yet the wood hidden deep inside often remained surprisingly dry. By breaking thick branches apart, or splitting open dead logs, our ancestors could reach that protected inner wood. Standing dead trees were valuable too. Because they no longer carried water from their roots, parts of their wood often stayed much drier than living trees, even beneath large rocks, under fallen logs, or inside dense bushes. Small pieces of dry fuel could sometimes be found. To someone without experience, the forest looked ruined. To someone who understood nature, it was still full of opportunities. That knowledge didn't appear overnight. It was passed from one generation to the next. Parents taught children. Experienced hunters taught younger members of the group. Every lesson increased their chances of surviving the next storm. In the prehistoric world, knowledge wasn't just power. Knowledge was survival. But the rain was quietly changing something even more important: the people themselves. Surviving an endless storm wasn't a job for one person. Everyone had a role. Some searched for food, others protected the fire, some gathered fuel, others cared for children, or watched for danger beyond the cave. The stronger helped the weaker, the older shared experience, the younger provided energy. No single person could do everything alone, and perhaps that's exactly what made humans different. While many animals relied mostly on instinct, humans relied on each other. Every storm became another lesson in cooperation. Every hardship strengthened the group. Every challenge rewarded those who planned ahead instead of waiting for disaster. Slowly, these survival habits became traditions. Traditions became culture, and culture became one of humanity's greatest advantages. Unlike almost every other animal, humans didn't have to start over every generation. Children inherited thousands of years of knowledge before they ever faced their first storm. That changed everything. It meant each generation could build upon what the previous one had already discovered. The result was a species that became better prepared with every passing century. Eventually, those same survival skills helped humans spread into freezing mountains, burning deserts, thick jungles, and nearly every environment on Earth. It all began with learning how to solve simple problems: how to keep a fire alive, how to find food, how to stay warm, how to survive one more day. The rain eventually stopped. It always did. The clouds cleared. The rivers slowly returned to normal. The forests began drying beneath the sun. But the people who walked out of those shelters carried something far more valuable than dry clothes. They carried new knowledge, knowledge that would help them survive the next storm, and the one after that. Thousands of generations later, that knowledge is still part of who we are. Every emergency plan, every weather forecast, every safe shelter, every survival guide, they all trace back to one simple instinct: prepare before the storm arrives. So the next time rain keeps falling outside your window, remember this: for your ancient ancestors, a week of rain wasn't just bad weather, it was one of nature's toughest survival tests. The people who passed that test didn't just survive, they became the ancestors of every human alive today, including you. Subscribe for more deep dives into ancient human survival, evolution, archaeology, prehistory, and the science behind how we really became human.